guys, it is Dave, it is Duncan and Kyle from Epidemic back with another album review. And for this review, Duncan, Kyle and I have been checking out the new album from progressive post-hardcore band Greyhaven. The band's new album, The Bright and Beautiful World, will be released on April 15th via Rude Records and Equal Vision Records. So this is album number 3 from Greyhaven, who have been active since around 2013. The album was written in 5 different locations, but the 4-piece wanted to make sure that their ideas were able to present themselves once they entered the studio with producer Will Putney.
Oh, there we go. Will Putney.
Will Putney. Taking pride in simply being 4 guys who like to play music, Greyhaven were confident they would be able to sort through the 18 demos they entered the studio with and pick out the best new songs of the batch. They endured a very organic process to ensure that this bright and beautiful world sounds like it was meant to be played live. So, Greyhaven. For fans of 16 different genres, this is kind of like when I was listening to this, I was thinking this is a tricky band to slap with a genre, you know what I mean? Like, it's hard to pigeonhole this band.
Yep.
There are many things going on. At their core, there's like a kind of like a punk-driven, chaotic, hardcore sound at their kind of roots. And you can hear that on the previous album as well. But then you've also got like bits of mathcore, you've got little kind of progressive elements, a little bit of metalcore, some post-hardcore, even like wee tinges of new metal in there as well. And it's an interesting mix. This is a band that I imagine will have a kind of huge amount of a crossover appeal, and could probably fit on various different kind of styled bills if they're touring and stuff. And I think all of those styles and like the kind of varied extremities make for quite an interesting album. I think I really liked the balance of this release in a few kind of different ways. Firstly, the kind of balance of like the chaos with the calm. It never feels like overloaded with too much intensity. Like even if they go like kind of ballistic for like a full track, they'll make sure that the next track has plenty of kind of hooks and melody that just kind of settles the energy of the album. And that I felt that also kind of played into the kind of the technicality of the album as well. Like there's a lot of moments in this release that they go from like these kind of like mathcore type riffs and very like offbeat rhythms, but then they know how to just kind of like ease off that side of it before it gets too like overpowering. And I can see that kind of mix being a factor that will pull in different types of fans as well. Like if you like the kind of that kind of frenzied like Dillinger like kind of guitar work, there's a lot to love on this. But if you prefer the kind of like early Norma Jean or even like Every Time I Die type kind of fire, then it's got that in spades. But if you like vocals that are like equally visceral and quite soulful as well, then this will be right up your street. And I think the thing is they're very good at all of it. Like there wasn't an element of their sound that I thought sounded weak or even like kind of underdeveloped. I think they are like technically very, very seasoned sounding, and you can hear that precision and the kind of level of songwriting getting better on each release they've brought out. I thought this was another kind of clear jump from their last album, Empty Black. I think one thing that they have perfected on this release for me are the kind of emphasis on the heavier parts. If you listen to the last album, they had like heavy moments, but for some reason it never felt completely satisfying. And I think that was because as a whole the album felt pretty full on and quite chaotic. So when the heavier parts came, I don't think they felt like kind of underlined enough. On this release, they've employed a slightly kind of almost kind of thickening technique in the guitar sound, which kind of really beefs up those heavy parts. I wasn't quite sure what it was. It sounded like almost like an octaver maybe, or something might be doing with the bass even possibly. We heard there was a band called, I think it was Baylor, I think we did a while back. And they did something similar with the kind of heavier parts. They were right kind of thickened up sounding, but regardless, like I think as long as they can pull it off live, then I think it's quite a clever move. I think it added better kind of dynamics between the heavy parts and then the kind of really kind of heavy parts. The other thing that kind of stood out to me on this was the vocalist. Brent Mills is the guy's name. What a really good voice this guy has. Like, and again, similar to the kind of music, he can kind of do it all. Like his screams are very like intense, but his melody is fantastic as well. He's got a little bit of that kind of Greg from Dillinger kind of tone in his melody.
It's not a bad thing though.
No, not at all. And you can hear it in the more kind of scorched kind of vocal sound as well. He transitions into the kind of smooth stuff like really smoothly. And his clean melodies are very well thought out. Even like after the kind of second or third listen to this, I felt like the hooks were just kind of getting really into my head. He's actually a little bit reminiscent of John Carbone from Moontooth as well. He's got a little bit of that in his voice as well, which is pretty cool. I think like as good as the music is and the vocals are, I think the production also really helps this album. Will Putney's done a really good job on it. It's quite modern in style, but it's not like too polished that it loses any of that kind of like hardcore bite that it has. It reminded me a little bit of some of the more recent kind of straight from the path stuff, especially in those kind of like bigger kind of bouncy parts of the album. Took me maybe a couple of listens of this album to kind of get accustomed to their sound. As I said, there's a lot going on style-wise, but I think it's got quite a good re-listen value. It's kind of grown on me quite a big amount since the first listen until now. And like in a world where we have no Every Time I Die or Dillinger Escape Plan, I think this like it comes at a really good time. Not really anything majorly negative to say about this one, to be honest. I think there's a few of the tracks sound maybe a little similar to each other musically. Like they use some of the ideas like a few times too many maybe. But I think vocally Brent tries to make the melodies on each track as different as he can. So I think he does a good job of steering the album away from sounding too repetitive. But for a band I'd never heard before, I did really enjoy this one, and I'm definitely looking forward to hearing what they do next. What about you guys? What do you think, Duncan? What do you think of this one?
There's, once again, without wanting to sound like a broken record here, there's a lot to like about this band. I think the diversity of what they bring to the album is what makes it interesting. I think if they'd even like chopped maybe 2 or 3 of the additional stylings that they bring in, it might have been a bit more monotonous overall. I think there's it's surprising, like as you mentioned from the press release, which once again, disclaimer, Duncan doesn't read any of the press releases. And I want to stress for the people on the internet that might be concerned, it's not because I can't read. I can read. It's just I have no interest in reading what someone thinks I should think about an album. I know press is very important. It's the reason Dave picks the albums for us to listen to. Those press releases are paramount for making them stand out. But by the time Dave's went through it, if he's given it to me, I don't need to go through it. So I don't. But like you were saying that they essentially came in with 18 songs, which means they've chopped 8 out. Yeah. And then when you listen to how good this album actually flows, the idea of those changing styles, specifically between songs that may be slightly more technical in one aspect and then more kind of earwormy on the next track, that to me is the importance of the kind of relationship between a band and a producer. But that's what they do. The best producers in the world are there to give the bands the best sound, but at the same time steer them to release the best version that they can in an album, which is sometimes to say, does that song fit, or does that song sound a bit too much like another track on here? I think they've got a great balance here. The thing that kind of stood out to me the most is how commercial this actually is, even though it is very jaggy in parts. It has sharp edges for days, but for the most part, there's at least 3 or 4 songs that I heard on this that was like, oh yeah, that's a single. That's easily a single. That would perform really well. The chorus is hooky, has the right amount of bims, enough changes, production sounds great. So I think they've got that in lockdown. But like you mentioned as well, the ability to transition into very much like Dillinger used to be able to. And it's difficult not to compare them to Dillinger in a lot of respects, even though Dillinger are the more extreme chaotic version. Later day Dillinger is not a kick in the balls off this, if you know what I mean. They're in a similar sphere. And that's good, because you mentioned we don't have that band anymore. We don't have a lot of the bands that are actually kind of quasi-influences on what these guys are doing. And because they're bringing it under one roof, that kind of makes me really enjoy the listen, because it reminds me of snippets of other things without necessarily making me go, oh, that just sounds like Dillinger. That just sounds like Every Time I Die. That's it. Norma Jean was the band I've been thinking about for the last 4 days. Got that. What does that fucking set as Norma Jean?
Yeah.
So all that's there. I think they've they couple of things that really make them a bit more interesting. One, vocally is a huge asset to me. That they have a singer that has range, a great use of melody, doesn't always do what's conventional in a track. Kept me guessing a lot, and I find myself, coming from a kind of vocal background, I find myself at times predicting where the vocals are going to go next in a track, and very seldom being wrong. But his choice of melodies were really interesting and against what I would have done, which is the safe road. He kind of mixes it up. Second thing is, I think the guitars themselves, you mentioned the kind of cornflower-esque thickening agent that they're using here. I think that's fine. I think, once again, that's fine. Even live, I think that's fine. You can get like pedals that'll do that. You do bits and bobs to make it work, and it will work. Always remember checking out another band who are nowhere near as technical, but at moments reminded me a little bit of Taproot. But early Taproot, like that guitarist, fucking tiny little guitar, he's a slight fellow, and they press a pedal and the guitar tone was fucking disgustingly heavy. You're like, how did you is that sort of level? That to me, I'm fully aware there's something going on in a studio environment for that, but when you only have what you have and you want things to sound heavier, by all means utilize them. I'd rather that than the alternative, which is the thing that Kyle hates, where a guitarist writes something and they quantize it, speed it up, and then replace all the sims with something else, and then by the end what you get is essentially a machine playing. It's not like that at all. It's just an effect to put over, and it sounds great. The other thing is, I think the drums on this are fucking killer, man. This guy genuinely kept me interested all the way through it. Was constantly mixing things up, doing small little things that I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, or a fill that I wasn't expecting. And when you bring all that in on the album, the fact that it runs as cleanly and as smoothly as it does, and it transitions between tracks as well as it does, I think is a testament to the writing process and the recording process. This is a great album. Once again, very Moorish. It's difficult not to be humming the songs 4 or 5 hours after you've listened to it. There's still a chorus going on in your head, and that's a credit. It's not an easy thing to do, as well as deliver the kind of jaggy edges that they have here. So I think this it should be a celebration all round for these guys. I think they've delivered a great album. I think they've delivered a memorable album, and I think they picked a great producer to give them a sound which is so commercial, but at the same time doesn't compromise any of the heavy or technical element in a way which kind of almost whitewashes them to something very bland and similar to a lot of other things out there. So it's a great listen. If you're not a Greyhaven fan, I'd never heard of them before. This was the first time I'd listened to them. This would prompt me to check out earlier stuff. I would definitely see them live if they toured. I think there's enough in here that would really, and it's the possibilities of bands they could play with are endless, man. Absolutely endless. Which is kind of, if you're a band like that, that's a good idea. In this climate, you want to be able to play on every gig. You don't want to just be playing on the one. So I thought this was great.
Nice. Kyle, what do you think?
I think they could definitely be on the Lollapalooza bill. I mean, broken records aside, I think they have clearly some very clear influences, but they wear it on their sleeve. But I mean, it doesn't sound like anything too derivative, if you know what I mean. You can hear definitely Dillinger and stuff like that, Sixth even a little bit as well. I don't know if that's intentional, but they're in that same sort of bubble. But Yeah, they've made it their own, and I love that they sound a bit more commercial, and it's not like always scorched, screeching vocals and stuff. They managed to mix it up in a hell of a lot of different ways, and I really like it. That one song, More and More Hands, is absolutely a great example of that. It goes through like 4 styles in one song. It's fantastic, and it all melds together really, really well as well. It's not like they're chopping and changing and suddenly here's a trap part, you know. It's like everything sounds really good and really well put together and really well thought through. And I just want to bring up again that dude's vocal range, like from the scorched, the guttural, the singing. It's just what the fuck, it's nuts.
It doesn't set. The thing is as well, there's like when you have a lot of vocalists will try and push a range, and there's a certain point where you hear it and you're like, that's maybe one step too far. It sounds comfortable in all ranges that he does.
It really does,
He never really Sims, and I'm sure he'd probably disagree, but he never at any point was I listening to it going, maybe like that's one step too far. It all works really well.
No, I completely agree. And I didn't detect any, I didn't hear any like studio messing around with him to make him hit those notes or anything like that either. So it's all very natural. I'm like, that's crazy. One thing I think the drums have been time aligned. It's definitely a real performance. The drummers actually played it and recorded it, but I think they've been aligned to the studio, and that put me off a little bit. I was like, why would you do that? Because like you said, I really enjoyed the drum parts. Keeping it interesting all the way through. The little fills here and there were fantastic. But then I thought they've been aligned for the most part. There might probably be parts where it's not, but put me off a little bit. Other than that, the production is disgustingly good. That guitar tone left me in just with no pants on. That was it. There was no pants time.
Nice.
Just loved it. Yeah. And I also love the first track is, you know, spiky and jagged. It sets the tone for the rest of it. But track 2 is like this weird poppy thing that could be on any fucking.
Like yourself. I loved that because I pressed play on this for the first time and I was like, oh, right.
Yeah,
because I've heard a lot of that jaggy, I've heard a lot of that, and then like you almost like all candy should just be called ear candy because there's like fucking whiplash like a motherfucker into this like really really poppy, really catchy track, and that's the stuff we're talking about in terms of you go in with 18 songs. And I can imagine that the 8 songs that didn't make this were probably all doing different shit again, but they really craft something that does, at no point do you feel like you know kind of where the next song's going, but at the same time what you get is surprisingly better than what you kind of expected you were going to get.
And the best part is all the songs have their own identity. None of them sound the same. You can always sit there and be like, oh, I'm listening to the Quiet Shakes or whatever. This is that song. It doesn't sound like any others on the album, which I really like. And I don't get to say that enough about bands because often you get an album that's like every song sounds a bit the same. Yeah. But with these guys, it's not the case at all. I don't know if they put out previous albums. If they have, I'm going to check them out because this was great. I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so ratings for this new album from Greyhaven, This Bright and Beautiful World. This, for me, it was one of those ones I kind of had a long, kind of hard think about the score for this album.
Yeah, maybe long and hard too.
On the toilet, off the toilet, Dave?
Both. because for me, this album kind of... It felt, for me, it kind of tilts between like a 4 and a 4.5. But I feel like a 4 overall is a little bit harsh. I feel like I'd be kind of shortchanging them a bit, giving them a 4. So I think I'm going to go 4.5 on this one. Duncan, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. This is a comfortable 4.5 for me. I think there's a lot that will, almost like a kind of cluster grenade, like flung into a room full of eclectic genre music fans. Everyone's getting hit. There's something on here. Everyone's going to get something where they're like, oh, that's really cool. I can listen to that, and then you're brought in and you experience the rest of the album. So I think they've done all that really well without at any point feeling like, oh, well, you've just put that in to please this demographic. Like they haven't done that. It's all the songs are really well written, really well performed, really well produced. I mean, like there's very very little on listening to this that I could mark down I would probably side with my only negative overall on this one is there was a couple of bits where I was like, that sounds kind of a little bit similar to something we've heard before, but there's so much road in between those bits that you're like, it's fine that you've come back to it. It's not as if you've overused that idea. It's just it kind of sounds a little bit similar to something you've done before. And that's a band sound. So 4.5 out of 5 for me.
Nice. And Kyle?
I'm going to make this a 3-0. 4.5 out of 5. Duncan's massive disappointment.
Which is the title of my sex tape.
Coming soon to a streaming service near
behind
you.
a paywall.
At least it's only your sex tape. It's my fucking biography.
This got dark.
Really did, yeah. Okay.
Let's bring Levy. I'll go to awkward humour every time things start getting uncomfortable. So here's my cock.
Okay. Greyhaven, this bright and beautiful world, out on April 15th.
Like my pubes are not that far away from that, by the way. At the moment.
Greyhaven.
Yeah, time is.
I was going to say,
on.
isn't that what you find on a gilf?
Also sounds like the name of the shittest dragon. Fly, Greyhaven.
It's like, no.
We loved this album, by the way.
Yes,
we
we
just
did.
realised I'm like laying it in the name of the band. Don't know
Yes.
what we're doing. Dave, this is why you should finish the fucking reviews.
April 15th, out on Wood Records, Equal Vision Records. Links below, check them out.
Awkward segue. Away.
Links to the band, pre-orders, all below. Let us know your thoughts if you want. If not, that's cool.
Oh,
We'll
so
see you
it's
we're not your dad.
What?
Do what Dave said.
Okay. Leave some thoughts, like Dave said. And
what
we'll
Dave
speak to you on the next review. Take care. Catch you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.